Greetings, Wayward Souls, it's the Game Pack Preacher, and you know what really grinds my gears? Microtransactions. Despite how omnipresent they are in the gaming industry these days, I still don't like them. They're an ever-present force that tempt the strongest of souls, and can potentially bankrupt the weakest, or more often, the most vulnerable or neurodivergent among us. Even I give in to the odd micro every now and then, despite my usual reluctance, and trust me, I can be a real cheapskate when I want to be. They're invasive and scummy at their most annoying, and completely pointless at their least annoying. There's just no winning with them. But despite the numerous examples I can give of outright disgusting microtransaction practices, what really grinds my gears is when microtransactions are added to a game that's already frickin' finished. Because not only do you have the already present issues with MTs, preying on the vulnerable, ruining game balance or economy, etc., etc., it's also incredibly disingenuous and almost feels like false advertising in a sense. And the real killer part about it is that it happens more often than one would think, and more often than it reasonably should. For those unaware, the most recent example of this was with the RE4 remake, which by all means is both a commercial and critical success. And yet, despite this, Capcom decided to add microtransactions a couple weeks after the game had already been released, and more importantly, reviewed.
Got something that might interest you.
Oh, but they aren't that bad. It's just for stuff in the single-player campaign. You mean the single-player campaign that can very easily be beaten without spending real-life money? The one that most people had already beaten by the time they released them? Because if you mean that single-player campaign, it's not really helping your case. Because in actuality, adding MTs to a game that's already out just really tells your audience two things. One, you're greedy, which I guess is obvious, but it still needed to be said. And two, you're either disingenuous or very insecure. Because even if it wasn't a decision based on pure greed, it really just screams that you're not confident enough for your own game to sell well. And I don't know why I'm just now thinking of this, but it is important to make the distinction that I strictly mean microtransactions. When it comes to things like DLC or expansions, those are different because you're actively getting new content that adds to or continues from the base game. Microtransactions, on the other hand, add things that are typically cosmetic or things that could very easily be earned or patched in. But rather than do that, most companies would rather sell you a solution or a bypass to a problem that they created, or in some instances, doesn't even exist in the first place. Like beating Resident Evil 4, for example. And despite them being relatively pointless, the fact still remains that they're there. The temptation is there, like an ugly boil or a zit, a blemish on a game most would consider fantastic. This doesn't just make RE4 Remake a bad game, but the point still stands. And bear in mind, this is just the most recent example of this. Another prominent example of this happening was, funny enough, with a different remake. The Crash Team Racing remake, to be specific, a great game with a ton of content that you could get by, playing the game. Like seriously, you earned a decent amount of in-game currency from just playing the thing, and the things you can buy were reasonably priced too. But then, lo and behold, a few months after the game's released, Activision Blizzard went and added microtransactions. And in this instance, it's even worse because they specifically said that they wouldn't. Cause, game companies have never lied about things before, right? It's hella dishonest, and betraying that trust makes people not want to associate with your games. And although I don't have anything concrete, the general backlash from this decision makes me think that people did stop associating with the game. So, with that being said, these two may be the most well-known examples of this happening, but I'd be willing to bet that there are more instances of this. And I simply have one thing to say when it comes to post-release microtransactions. Stop! And in case I wasn't clear the first time, stop! It's gross and intrusive, going back to that zit comparison a while back. It may just be cosmetic, they may not matter at the end of the day, but they're there, and the urge to scratch that zit tempts even the strongest of souls. Or on the other hand, others may just simply choose to remove it and not even give it a second glance. And on the very low chance that any game developer is watching this video, a message for you. Any money you could possibly make from adding microtransactions on a released game will never make up for the potential sales and goodwill you will inevitably lose. So stop adding that crap in after the fact. If you want my money, the least you can do is be upfront about it. So then yeah, I guess that'll do it. As always, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. More to come in the future, and I'll see you guys around.